Allen Lund Company wishes all the owner-operators out there a Happy New Year. OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
Welcome to the show. Scott here, keeping the seat warm for host Mark Reddick for the day. Thanks for joining us. We've got quite a bit of trucking-related news to cover here in just a moment, but first, let's give you a quick rundown of the rest of the show. Here in a bit, we'll catch up with Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine for details about a recent meeting of the Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee on truck parking. There's some common ground about the parking shortage, but differing viewpoints on how to solve it. Tyson will help us sift through the discussion there. Then we'll talk cargo theft with Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waske of OIDA's Insurance Department. They've got some solid tips on ensuring your safety and avoiding the claims process. And finally, we'll close things out with our weekly look at the spot market. Brent Hutto of Truck Stop is optimistic about what's to come. Along with looking at the future, he'll also discuss the present and break down the numbers for us. So lots to get to on today's show. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. President Biden signed a transportation security bill into law before the end of the year. The Bipartisan Transportation Security Screening Modernization Act is meant to streamline the security clearance process for truck drivers and others. While current Transportation Security Administration policies often require separate applications for things like the Transportation Worker Identification Credential and hazardous materials endorsement, the new law will make it so people only have to go through a security threat assessment once. The bill was supported by OOIDA, the American Trucking Association, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and dozens of state trucking organizations. The man tapped by President-elect Trump to lead the Transportation Department will sit before Congress next week for his confirmation hearing. Sean Duffy is set to appear before the Senate Commerce Committee on Wednesday, January 15th. The former Republican congressman from Wisconsin appears to be on track for confirmation, with a combination of Republicans and Democrats supporting his nomination. Pointing to his previous support for small business truckers, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association believes Duffy is well suited to lead the U.S. Department of Transportation. In a letter to Senate leaders signed by OOIDA President Todd Spencer, the association expressed strong support for Duffy. When Duffy served in the House of Representatives from 2011 to 2019, he was one of 25 members who supported OOIDA's request for qualified small business truckers to be exempt from the electronic logging device mandate. Duffy signed a letter to FMCSA expressing his support for the OOIDA petition. The job of a truck driver remains one of the most dangerous in the United States. That's according to a new report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that breaks down the number of workplace deaths for 2023. Workplace incidents claim the lives of 823 heavy and tractor-trailer truck drivers that year, down 12% from the previous year and the lowest since 2016. The majority of deaths were a result of crashes. The 2023 total is the highest of any other occupation on the survey. In a distant second, there were 318 workplace fatalities among construction laborers. After some legal wrangling and hand-wringing, New York City's congestion pricing went into effect this week. The tolls affect vehicles, including commercial vehicles, entering and exiting areas south of 60th Street. Truckers driving a multi-unit truck with an Easy Pass will be charged $21.60 during the peak period, which is 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. Rates decreased by 75% overnight to $5.40. For truck drivers who do not have an Easy Pass, congestion pricing toll rates jump to $32.40. Truck drivers are charged each time they enter the congestion pricing zone with no daily cap. Several federal lawsuits have been filed challenging New York City's congestion pricing program, but none were successful in securing a preliminary injunction ahead of the January 5th start date. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration wants to know if warning devices on stopped commercial motor vehicles work at preventing crashes. FMCSA announced plans for a study and a notice on the Federal Register. More than 250 drivers are expected to participate. Current regulations require specific warning devices to be carried on all commercial motor vehicles and deployed near the vehicle whenever it is stopped on the road or shoulder. There are specific rules concerning how and where the warning devices must be placed based on a variety of factors, including whether the road is straight or on a curve. FMCSA will try to find out whether the rules are making a difference. Your next violation of a U.S. DOT regulation is going to cost you a little more. Fine amounts went up at the start of the new year to reflect inflation. The increases are just about 1% across the board, slightly lower than the rate of increase a year ago. The U.S. Department of Transportation isn't making any changes to its random drug testing rates in the new year. FMCSA said the testing rate will remain at 50%. Because there is no change, there will be no notice on the Federal Register. Less than a year after it was destroyed by a large cargo ship, crews are beginning the process of rebuilding Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. The first step is planning, which includes surveying, soil sample collections, and more. All told, the rebuild is expected to take about 4 years and cost about $2 billion. The Key Bridge collapsed last March after that cargo ship collided with it. 6 people were killed. Missouri carriers, listen up. You're going to have to wait a bit before affixing your 2025 IFTA decal, or even getting it for that matter. The Missouri Department of Transportation said there have been delays in getting materials for the decals. That meant decals were supposed to go out ahead of the December 31st deadline, didn't. The Missouri DOT hopes to have the issue resolved in the coming days. In the meantime, enforcement has been delayed through the end of February for commercial vehicles operating in the state with 2024 decals. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has removed 6 more devices from its list of registered ELDs. They include Blue Star ELD, Roadstar Solutions, United ELD, Speed ELD, and 2 Track and Sure ELD devices. The agency says the devices were removed because they fail to meet minimum requirements. The agency sent out an industry-wide email to inform motor carriers of the move. Those operating with a revoked ELD must stop using it immediately and revert to paper logs or logging software to record required hours of service data. Those using any of the models have until March 9th to replace it with a compliant one. This is the 3rd alert from FMCSA about revoked ELDs in the past month. The state of Hawaii wants an existing CDL skills test exemption to be expanded. In early 2024, FMCSA granted an exemption to drivers on 2 islands because they don't have the highway infrastructure required for some of the on-road driving skills required by the CDL test. That exemption, which currently runs through February of 2026, applies only to CDL applicants taking the test on Lanai and Molokai and limits those drivers to operating a commercial motor vehicle on those 2 islands only. Hawaii's latest exemption request asks FMCSA to also exempt drivers on these 2 islands from some of the entry-level driver training curriculum requirements. Hawaii is also now asking for a 5-year exemption. Comments on the requests are being accepted through January 29th. And finally, Love's has a new location in southeastern Missouri. It's in Fredericktown, just off Highway 67, about halfway between Poplar Bluff and St. Louis. The new travel stop includes 63 truck parking spaces. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. For more details on most of the stories Ashley just had for us and details on many others, check out our website, landline.media. From all the latest trucking news and analysis to opinion pieces and more, we've got you covered at landline.media. Coming up next here on the show, we're going to break down 2 days of talks within the Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee about the truck parking crisis. There was talk about technology and infrastructure and lots more as stakeholders try to figure out the right ways to solve the underlying problems. So hang tight. That's coming right up, right here on Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
A blank space on many maps with the distance between parking spaces seemingly as great as infinity. It is the boundary that separates safety and security from the dangers of the road, the space between electronic signs and a place in which to rest. It is not a dimension of the imagination, but instead the reality faced by truck drivers every single day. It is a place we call the parking zone. Here are your guides for this journey into parking news good and bad, Scott Thompson and Tyson Fisher.
Thanks, Mark, and welcome, Tyson. Happy New Year. Can we still say Happy New Year?
Yeah.
It's a little more than a week away, I guess, from the New Year.
This is the last day.
It's the last day. Okay, good. All right, we made it. Happy New Year, then.
Happy New Year to you.
Normally, we jump around and cover all the latest truck parking news across the country. Today, though, we're going to focus on one event in particular. This is the Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee. They held a virtual meeting in mid-December over a couple of days, and the focus was primarily on truck parking here. They focused on finding solutions, a lot of worthwhile, I think, discussions back and forth about the crisis, the truck parking crisis, and hoping to find solutions here. Can you just talk real quick before we get into the details here, just the kind of the purpose, the idea of what they were trying to do here?
Sure. So the Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee was established a little while ago. And their whole thing is they are tasked with addressing select issues for FMCSA to look at. And in this particular meeting, as you pointed out, it was truck parking. And so what they're tasked with this time around is recommending initiatives to increase the availability of truck parking because of the shortage. So they were given very specific tasks, which is basically to look at best practices of states that are doing it well, and to kind of look at what they're doing and how that can be applied across the nation, and also what other private sector is doing well, and how that can be applied at a national level. So basically get all these great minds in the industry together and figure out how to move forward with that.
Yeah, that's a lot to chew on there.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you're talking about the truck parking crisis on a local, federal, state level, there's a lot of ins and outs and a lot of issues, as you know probably better than anybody. Let's kind of run through the ideas that they talked about, because they had a number of interesting, I think, back and forths. One of them was about technology, right? Yep. They focused on that, kind of gave OOIDA President Todd Spencer an opportunity to chime in with his thoughts on this. But I think it's interesting the different perspectives with regard to technology and the truck parking crisis.
Sure. So, I mean, what you need to understand is that FMCSA's role in truck parking may not be what you expect it to be. And so, essentially, their role is really on the technology side. So they gave a presentation, and their presentation was based on what's called the Truck Parking Information Management System. Those are those digital signs along the interstates that show you how many parking spaces are at upcoming rest areas. And so when it comes to FMCSA funding, so funding coming directly from that agency, it's going to be going directed more towards stuff like that and some studies here and there. When it comes to capacity, that falls under the Federal Highway Administration's jurisdiction. So those are two distinctions. So if you want to, submit some of your 2 cents or some comments on the truck parking situation, if it's a capacity issue, you want to direct that to the Federal Highway Administration. So anyway, with that little technicality out of the way, so there was a lot of discussion about those truck parking information management system signs. And one thing that FMCSA is working on. So another thing that they have done is that at a state level, they have created basically like these heat maps, which shows where there's a lot of demand for parking and stuff like that. We have those at the state level. We don't have a national map like that. And that's something that they're working on. Right. And that is something that'd be very beneficial for all stakeholders to kind of like to go back to make decisions. So with all that being said, OIDA President Todd Spencer, he kind of chimed in during this conversation, and he pointed out that, if the technology is just going to tell truckers that there's no place to park, then that trucker, and this is his quote, the technology has no value to them, And he's got a point there. And so he takes issues with there's a limited amount of resources and funding for parking initiatives. So when that limited funding is going towards stuff like, these these information signs, the question is, well, where's the money for capacity?
Yeah,
Which that's how you solve this problem. And so, again, that is not FMCSA's jurisdiction, but he did wanted to bring that to the table, which is, this is great that we have this technology. There is a place for it, but we really need to start diverting some of that money towards the real solution, which is capacity. And so, other issues when it comes to technology is data privacy. So, a lot of parking nowadays is being done via app. We got all types of apps out there that will give you parking, Truck Parking Club being a big one. But there's a issue with data privacy. Like, where is your data going? Who is getting that data? Nicole Katsakidis, she's basically, I kind of consider her like the parking guru at federal FMCSA.
Yeah.
She mentioned that that Trucker Path, for example, is owned by a Chinese social media company. It's owned by a Chinese company, and that is a very popular trucking app that does a lot of functions. And so basically you have this situation where you have this Chinese entity has access to a giant U.S. supply chain database, raises some concerns.
There could be some issues there. Yeah.
Now, point out there has been no indication that anything nefarious is going on with Trucker Path, but these are questions that people have that have not been addressed. So, technology again taking front and center for FMCSA's part in truck parking, but a lot of stakeholders, including OIDAs, like let's try to put our focus more on the capacity side.
Yeah, and absolutely, as you pointed out there, technology could lend a helping hand for this issue in terms of information. I'm curious to see how AI factors into this eventually in helping to find solutions in those hotspots that you mentioned, because I think there is value in that. But as you point out, the real solution here is, hey, we don't have enough truck parking spaces. The solution is, more truck parking spaces, which seems pretty simple. But again, I know getting to that point is not as easy as it sounds. The good news with this advisory committee, and I think pretty much across the board here, I think everyone's on the same page with wanting to find solutions to this problem. They recognize that there is a problem. It's just a matter of figuring out what that solution looks like. In terms of doing that, in terms of finding best practices when it comes to solving this problem, where do we stand, I guess, with regard to this meeting in particular?
I mean, that's actually the big question, right? Yeah. And there wasn't there was some consensus, but there's just a lot of variables here, which is why it's a hard issue to tackle. So a lot of the conversation about best practices is deals with the states that are doing it right when it comes to truck parking. Allowing parking at weigh stations was brought up numerous times as a quick, easy solution right there. And another solution is parking at sports complexes. So the Colorado Department of Transportation, they're looking into an agreement with a Mile High Stadium for parking opportunities there.
That would open up a lot of space.
It's a lot of space. Like, if you ever been to a sporting event, those are giant lots.
That's massive.
They're just sitting there for the most part.
Half of the year.
Or more. Or more than that.
For the NFL,
Yeah. So those are possible solutions. Now, there are some legal, funding, and then local and county regulatory hurdles that need to be crossed. Some states have figured that out, and so the thing is like, well, how did they figure that out, and how can they convey that information to states that have not quite figured that out? Unfortunately, there was no one representing state, county, or local governments present during the meeting. So a discussion was had about getting the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials to present at the next meeting. Basically, give them a seat at the table, because at the end of the day, those are the people who get to make the decisions. They'll make these things happen to implement the adding capacity.
Right.
And so at the next meeting, they're hoping to get them at the table and to kind of talk about this. But when we talk about implementing truck parking projects, you usually talk about federal and state governments. But again, OIDA President Todd Spencer, he mentioned that there needs to be more of a focus on local and county governments, because at the end of the day, those are the governments that are really making most of the truck parking decisions, especially when it comes to the private sector parking, like truck stops and stuff like that. And so, for example, OOIDA recently sent a letter of support for a pilot truck stop in Chicopee, Massachusetts. that truck stop is only going to have 25 parking spaces. But even just 25 parking spaces, locals don't even want that many, Yeah. And 25 may not seem a lot in the grand scheme of things, but OOIDA is able to understand that it does mean a lot for that area right there. And they took time to reach out to the local government just for 25 truck parking spaces. And so what Mr. Spencer is basically, presenting is that other stakeholders have a similar, emphasis or focus on the local government side of this situation.
Yeah, there are solutions that are kind of common sense. You mentioned the Mile High Stadium, idea, which you've got existing land. Let's use that land and let trucks park there when it's convenient or, when they can. The other aspect is building new truck parking, and that's going to be the other side of this. It's probably the biggest hurdle right now. Did they talk specifically about funding and making sure that these things are being paid for?
Yeah, quite a bit. So, again, Nicole Kasakidis at FMCSA pointed out that states face federal funding issues, including competing with other types of projects and commercialization bans. So on the project competition, when you're competing for grants, you're competing against other bigger projects at other states, bigger, sexier to the public projects within their own state. And so there's no dedicated funding for parking. That causes a problem. Obviously, the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act will solve that problem. We are expected a fourth go at this in the next Congress.
They're going to reintroduce that.
Hasn't been reintroduced yet, but expected to happen.
Yep.
So that's the thing that one issue, way to solve that issue. There's also a commercialization ban. So when there is federal funding, it cannot be given to the private sector. So, for example, if Florida wants to give money to, Love's Travel Stops to build a bunch of, truck stops, they can't do that. Also, there's no commercialization at government-funded rest areas along the interstate. So there's no revenue stream at these rest areas, but you have to pay for maintenance and operations. Well, these federal grants can't go towards maintenance and operations. It's only to build it. And so now the government or the state government has to find funding for that. So these are funding issues that are being presented to the states that they haven't quite figured it out. So that's the thing that, again, we're trying to resolve. And the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act will solve many of those problems, including a provision that will allow private truck stops to tap into that funding.
Yeah, I'm not in the prediction business, but we know that it's going to be reintroduced, or I think we can safely say that. And I feel bullish that we're going to see momentum in 2025 on this, hopefully, with some, hopefully it being passed and signed into law. We'll obviously be covering that over the coming months. With regard to the Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee, what's next here? You mentioned a meeting's coming up. What else can we look out for?
So again, we look forward to that spring meeting. During that spring meeting, they are going to present, if they have come to it, their recommendations to FMCSA. They will get those recommendations. Hopefully, we'll get some state government stakeholder input on that. In the meantime, several members said that they want some more short-term solutions to truck parking. And so hopefully we'll see some more stuff like that, like the weigh stations and stuff like that. In the meantime, there are several things that truck drivers can do to help solve this problem. The first thing is to reach out to your federal lawmakers. So when that parking bill is reintroduced, reach out to your lawmakers, reach out to your state lawmakers about their jurisdictional issues. And then lastly, get involved with local government issues when necessary. So if there's like a local truck stop being proposed, get your voice and support out there, because I assure you the voice in opposition will be present.
Yep.
So make sure that any voice and support will be there as well.
We will leave it there, Tyson, but folks can check out your outstanding work covering the truck parking crisis just about every day on Landline.media and in every issue of Landline Magazine. Tyson, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
With that, we'll step out for a quick break, but hang tight. There's more Landline Now coming right up.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit CapitalReman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Landline Now, welcome back. Like tires, fuel, and an engine, insurance is one of those things you just have to have for your truck. But not all insurance is created equal. Ashley Blackford is here with the experts from OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department to answer some questions.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waskey with OOIDA's Insurance Department. How are you doing today, ladies?
Cold, but good.
It is cold.
It is cold.
It is cold. Today, we are talking about cargo theft. Now, sometimes I feel like there's topics in trucking that we talk about over and over and over again. But this is really one of those topics that I think we could probably discuss for many years to come, and probably will be discussing for many years to come. Is that right?
Hopefully, yeah. Well, hopefully on our part, we get to see you that often. I do not hope that cargo theft continues to be such a thing that we have to talk about it.
Yes, but yes, it definitely is an issue. I'm curious, numbers-wise, what are the numbers? What do they look like? Has it increased from year to year?
There typically is an increase. I mean, when I looked up some of the numbers at the end of 2023, they had already increased from the prior year. And then when I looked them up again, recently, they had increased even further. What did we say, Lisa? Like
41% of the theft in the first half of 24, increased. So, and a lot of those thefts were warehouses. Mm-hmm. Some of the, a lot of them are unsecured loads. Mm-hmm.
Or in a parking lot, or, I don't know that it happens at truck stops too often, because those are usually lit, more secure camera areas. But yeah, it happens a lot in warehouses. And it is. I mean, overall, to answer your initial question, it is up around 46% from a year ago. Which is huge. 46% is a huge increase.
Yeah. Yep. Why do you think that is?
I bet the people that steal the freight could give us a more insight on that. We can only speculate, but I'm sure it's easy to make money. If you
the economy is just so hard right now.
It is, yeah.
They're looking for any way they can to.
For my part, like stealing a whole load of freight is too much work.
I
mean, I'm too honest for it anyway.
Let's put that effort into a job.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I can't even imagine what they go through to it. Honestly, it makes me think there's multiple parties involved.
Yeah.
Not the driver or the trucker necessarily, but it does make you wonder if there's a...
It's a ring.
It's
a full-on business.
Yeah.
And, people don't like to buy stolen goods, but people like a deal on stuff. And I think the offenders know that.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit. There's, obviously different ways that this happens. I think I've seen videos of, the driver getting attacked and, them going into the back and getting everything out. But there's also some more, I don't want to say impressive ways that these thieves do this.
Don't church it up, Ashley.
I know. But there are, they're not just looking for a random trailer. There's some work that goes into this.
Sure.
Right, definitely. In other ways, not only are they just stealing straight from the source, when it's parked or something, but they are pretending to be a legitimate broker, or they're stealing somebody's identity, essentially booking the load.
We actually see that way too often.
Right.
I don't want to say all the time, but yeah, Lisa makes a really good point, because we do talk to owner-operators who have had not full-on identity stolen, but their numbers, their MCDOT number, accidents reported under those numbers when they were like, hey, I was across the country.
Yeah. Now, I know this usually spikes around the holidays. Have you gotten any calls? We're coming off the holidays now. I know numbers will probably come out in the weeks to come, but have you heard anything?
I've not heard anything yet.
Right.
I'm sure.
I would imagine people in our claims office have.
Oh, yeah.
And that doesn't always trickle over to us. But yeah, like Lisa said, it's bound to happen.
Yeah. What are some of the common types of freight that typically get stolen?
Definitely your high-end stuff, copper, brass, aluminum, sports apparel, especially if it's licensed, brand, Nike brands, stuff like that. They're looking for that stuff because it's easy to sell, easy to
It is easy to sell, yeah. Even like personal care items and beauty products. Again, it goes back to things that will sell quickly and easily, especially at probably some discounted price, you know.
I'm always interested, how is it, I mean, like I said earlier, it's not just people coming up on a trailer and being like, well, hopefully there's something good in here. Like, I mean, they look into this, right? Like they're looking into what the load is. I mean, I know there's probably some random, coming up on trailers as well, but
I think usually they do. I mean, we have seen, like one of you mentioned earlier about the situations where the driver's attacked and then, their trailer full of stuff is taken. And I think in a situation like that, you're probably taking more of a chance, like not knowing what's in the packages.
yeah.
But I have seen like some claims that the driver had no idea it was even happening.
Right.
Like either woke up towards the end or got up the next day and everything's gone. That just goes to show how much time and effort they put into it. I mean, they are careful. Sometimes even maybe in a parking lot, that's well lit, or they're taking the risk.
And I know sometimes they take the, what's in the trailer out. But sometimes they just take the whole trailer, right?
Oh, sure. Yep. I would imagine so, yeah.
Which is, I'm always interested in the ones that steal trailers of meat. I'm like, where are you going with that? Like, are you putting that on Facebook Marketplace? Yeah. Like, how are you? Like, how are you selling that?
Having some big barbecues.
Yes.
I've never really thought about it, but you have to wonder, is it to like a restaurant or?
Well, yeah.
Or are you just driving around with a refrigerated van?
Yeah, it just
going door to door.
That always makes me leery of those guys that do go door to door.
Yes, exactly. Where are you getting this stuff?
Right.
Honestly, though, they've been around forever, and usually they're pretty legit. Like the Schwann's man.
Yeah. What are some things drivers should do or could do to protect their freight?
Well, we always caution against leaving it unattended. And some aren't able to park their equipment at home, and so they do have to park in a facility or a truck stop or something like that close by. And so if that's the situation, try to go back and check on it as often as possible. I mean, and especially because a lot of cargo policies have an exclusion. If it's unattended for X amount of time and it's stolen or something happens, they may not cover it.
That's why it's good practice to try and find a lot that maybe you have to pay for, but that lot is gated, it's locked, there's cameras, which doesn't always prevent theft. I mean, it can still happen, but it just lowers the chances.
Well, and it helps your claim go more efficiently.
Yeah.
The more that a claims office or adjusters have to view or look at or help identify what transpired, it's just going to make it go a little more fluid.
Yeah.
What is the process if someone does fall victim with theft? What's the process in going through the insurance process, I guess?
Well, they just have to call our claims office, and show that the load was stolen. I mean, other than that, they follow up, they file a police report. Then you just hurry up and wait. If it's the whole trailer, is it going to be found?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure the loads never are found. Well, I can't say never. They probably are.
Right.
A very small chance, but.
Well, and, it's some of it's going to vary depending on your insurance company. First step, absolutely call insurance. See what they need from you, because a lot of times they'll probably ask for a bill of lading, or, they're going to want all the components to try and figure this out as quickly as possible. So they may even contact the receiver, like, where'd you pick it up? Where were you supposed to deliver it? Where was it at? In between those two places. Just be prepared to provide documentation. And like I said, that could vary depending on who you're insured with.
Now, when it comes to, broker fraud, that's a huge issue. What are some things that drivers can do to try to combat this?
Vet your brokers. Don't just assume that they're legitimate. Look up their MC numbers, their DOT numbers. Do a check on them. Truck drivers have a lot of friends. Hey, have you ever
Right.
Worked with this company. Do your due diligence.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because that's how a lot of these thefts are happening, is someone has a quote-unquote broker authority, and, maybe they have to go through the steps to get it, or maybe they're using someone else's fraudulently, which is probably more likely the case. They'll book your load, and then that's one step in the ring that Lisa was talking about of theft. That is one thing that we've seen. So yeah, going back to vet those brokers, look at their longevity on FMCSA. How long have they had those numbers? A quick Google review. I mean, I'm not saying believe everything you read on Google.
Yeah.
But a Google review of any place, any kind of internet review, if they have a website, reviews on that. See what people have said, because if there's nothing, it's hard to gauge.
Yeah.
Even if there's, like you said, good reviews, bad reviews, but there's no reviews, that might be
a red flag. Yeah.
Might be, yeah.
What are some other red flags?
Check out their address. They could have a virtual address. Virtual address, there's nobody there, which to me is the biggest red flag. If you're running a business, you have people at a location that are working, that you can contact, that you can see.
Yeah, and we see a lot of virtual addresses now, so we're not saying that in and of itself is scandalous or sketchy. But when you're doing business with someone, yeah, like Lisa said, you want to be able to see them, and potentially meet with them. I mean, or know they exist.
Yeah.
Everything about them's not made up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And I think you mentioned this. If the load seems too good to be true, if it seems like, gosh, this is paying more than it typically would, that's also
probably
too good to be true.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Other things we would recommend, if they've got a phone number on the load board, cross-reference it with FMCSA. Does the information under their broker authority match the other information you're finding? Sometimes it won't. So it's not an immediate concern, but it's also something to tick in the in the tick box.
Right. And if they are asking for things that normally they wouldn't, with your MC or DOT number, you have a PIN number that you create. If they're asking for that information, that's way too much info. They don't need to know your PIN number. So when they start diving into your details, that could be a red flag.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, not everyone you haul for is going to have an MC or DOT number to check out. Some people just haul directly for the shipper, and honestly, those are, I think, some of the best paying gigs out there if you can manage it. But they're not very common, but they aren't going to have MC or DOT information to look up typically. They might, but that's not always the case. So
usually you'll have a relationship with that shipper.
Usually so. But it has to start somewhere. Yeah. So, you can still use a lot of those methods. Look them up. See, like Lisa said, talk to your friends, see if there's anyone else that's hauled for them, or chat boards or something like that.
All right. Ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waskey of OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department. If you have any questions about truck insurance, you can call 816-229-5791. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. We'll be back after this.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide.
Vendor choice. Owner-operators rejoice.
Truckdown.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. If you're hauling freight and running your own business, you need to keep track of some basic facts and figures that can determine whether you succeed or fail. And that includes finding the freight and how much money you can make hauling it. Today, Landline Now's Ashley Blackford will bring us some of that information and get some insight as to why things are happening with the folks from truckstop.com. Here's Ashley now with a report.
Thanks, Mark. Brent Hutto with Truckstop joins me now. Brent, how are you doing?
Well, actually, it's a new year. I'm optimistic, and I'm in trucking, so I'm doing pretty well. I'll tell you what, it's always fun to start a new year of trucking. Although I know trucking is a 24/7 job, and one day is just like the next a lot of times. But it's always kind of good to kind of put a year behind us, especially like 2024 and 2023 were, and kind of be optimistic about 2025.
Yes, for sure. Now, our listeners should be familiar now that you typically start these sessions with a theme song. And today's song, usually I don't know your songs that you choose for this. Today's song, if you would have asked me who sung this, I would have said Anne Murray. And for our Canadian listeners, they might recognize that name. She's Canadian. She's from the Maritimes.
And a legend. Yeah, sure.
So, yeah. But no, Johnny Nash.
There you go. Johnny Nash, I can see clearly now. I tell you what, that's sort of my optimistic way of looking at things, is that now that we've gotten the entire post-pandemic marketplace worked out of our systems, we can see clearly now. I love by the way, I love to sing that song too. If you ever hear me sing, you may hear me singing that song. Maybe not today, but we can see clearly now kind of where things are beginning to navigate. And that'll really kind of be the theme of today's update, as we kind of look at the market conditions and those sort of things as we kind of launch into that. Well, what we can see is that the marketplace is experiencing seasonality. And what I mean by seasonality for the owner-operators out there, and look, I didn't know what seasonality was until I jumped in all this data many years ago. It's in when you have a really big data set or a really big market like the U.S. economy or freight, you want to see things change at certain times of the year, and you want to see them happen normally every year. Well, we're back to that. That didn't happen in 2023. It happened some in the end of 2024, and so we're kind of back to the standard ups and downs in our market. But the good thing is that we'll see good increases all year long for rates, especially for owner-operators. When you look at the market demand index, as you and I have talked about through the whole holiday season, beginning with Thanksgiving, there's ups and downs from the holiday season. So when you look at like the market pressure, it doesn't make a lot of sense because it goes wildly up and down. Like last week it was 47, this week it's 67. 2 weeks ago it was 47, last week it was 67. So it kind of goes way up and down. What you want to look at is the amount of loads that are available in the market normal. Yes, they are. Okay, so and by the way, we're sort of in week 1 of 2025. We're sort of still in week 53 of 2024 because there was this crossover week. So the data is going to seem a little bit muddled, or the reports will seem a little muddled. But the good thing is that rates have increased a bunch. Overall, you're looking at right center of the market right now about $2.34. Remember, that's the posted rate. You should be negotiating for more. I will never not say that. You should always be negotiating for more if you're a carrier to know your marketplace that you're serving, because every lane is unique. Every single lane is unique. Every load is unique. So please negotiate that. But van increased 2 cents. Flatbed, which by the way did not change much and doesn't change much during the holidays. What changes is van and refrigerated. Flatbed didn't change much, went down 2 cents, but it had gone up 2 cents. So the big change was refrigerated. It went up another 11 cents. It went up like 25 cents 2 weeks ago, went up 11 cents a week ago. So right now, refrigerators standing at $2.71, which it is 7 cents above week 1 of last year, which shows you, as an owner-operator, the marketplace pricing continues to increase. And now, by the way, here's another thing. Week 1 last year for owner-operators in the dry van marketplace was $2.13 a mile, $2.18 a mile. All right, so that's 5 cents above that. These are quantifiable increases and things that you need to pay attention to. And if fuel had continued to go down, this would be even more valuable. Or if it even stayed up, the rates would be higher. But my point, though, is that rates continue to stay very positive and are going to continue to stay positive. And the thing that kind of gives me the indicator on this, Ashley, that you and I always talk about, is the outbound tender reject index, which is a sonar, but a FreightWaves product. It measures the amount of contract freight that's being rejected at the price they negotiated at, and some of that goes into the spot market. Well, it went up high over the last couple of weeks, but it didn't come down much week to week. Right now, the outbound tender reject index is almost 7%, which is really positive for owner-operators. That means more freight's going to come into the spot market, get negotiated at a higher rate. So that's a really good, wonderful things for owner-operators. And here's the other thing. Here's another thing that jumped out. I'll talk about this a little bit later, is that rates, and I'll reveal the percentage in the end, rates have continued to modulate, even all through 2024 for owner-operators. Modulate up, more positive, so higher rates.
What are some of the top regions and lanes from last week?
Yeah, so looking at these things, so just look at rates. Rates have continued to come up, even though they modulate down in just a couple of areas. Overall, they've continued to go up. So across the board, rates are much more positive. Like, for instance, in the Midwest, the average rate is 256. So that's a fantastic thing. The West Coast is 242. So that just shows you that there's more opportunity in different areas of the country. And when you look at some of the lanes and stuff that have come up, you kind of see, as we talked about before, the few changes. Some out west stuff, Portland to Salt Lake for van, Houston to different places in Texas to Texas. Flatbed, you look at that, same thing. Texas is still the strongest marketplace. Refrigerated, Texas to Kansas City, Houston to Kansas City. Both the two biggest changes were Houston to Kansas City, and then Cincinnati to Houston, so reverse back into Houston. The next couple of biggest markets. So those are the overall sort of increases in lanes. But as with everything, know your marketplaces. Please understand how to use any platform that you're using to find freight.
All right. Now, you're always full of wonderful information. What are some important industry points that owner-operators should know about?
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, first off, the freight correction, and some people call it a recession, my good friends over at FreightWays. I call it a correction. Is over, and it has been since about May of last year. I do agree with their idea that it's totally begun to come back up on a positive swing. So that's a good thing. The freight correction is over. And what I mean by correction, we had this high market in the pandemic, which everybody made us more money than they ever made in their trucking businesses and in their operations and their lives. And so it came back down. Everything comes back down. We live in a supply and demand market. The trucking industry, the freight industry is a supply and demand marketplace. Anything that's as big as we are is probably going to be supply and demand. So the freight recession is over. And here's what I was talking about earlier. Spot rates year over year are up a net 16% year over year. That is meaningful to an owner-operator's pocketbook. The data on TruckStop, you and I have been talking about this. We're now at 23 weeks where rates were in a row, 23 weeks in a row where rates were over 2023 in 2024. So that's a good thing. It's continued into the 2025 year that we're in now. So that's a good thing. But overall, this is a good idea that the marketplace is beginning to be more popular. And look, it's going to be all year long for owner-operators. It's going to sequentially come up. It'll have some ups and downs, but it's sequentially going to come up. So if you're an owner-operator, make sure you're negotiating for a higher rate out there because the marketplace is more open to pay you that, especially at the beginning of the year. And as you and I like to say to many of these owner-operators, create good relationships because the relationships always pay off. And the last thing is this. You always want to follow the money. Look, we're in a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Follow the money. So the people that have money that want to invest into trucking are much more optimistic. There's a great article this past week as well about some of the major players inside of transportation that invest billions of dollars into our marketplace are much more optimistic. And they're not the only ones. I've heard from several other ones that are very optimistic about 2025 being a marketplace. They want to invest into trucking. By the way, they did this for the past almost decade until the last 18 months where they kind of took a break because money was expensive and those sort of things. But really, follow the money. I'm optimistic. I think it's going to be a much better year in 2025 than 2024, and certainly in 2023 for owner-operators. And I'm glad that Landline and OOIDA and TruckStop are there to help owner-operators see that every day.
Wonderful. Brent, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Ash. Anytime.
That was Brent Hutto with TruckStop. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome. And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.